Coming up on The World Today, former Trump advisor Steve Bannon has been charged with fraud over the Mexico wall funds. More speakers at the U.S. Democratic Party convention attacked President Donald Trump in their speeches. Last Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny unconscious in hospital after allegedly being poisoned. Well, welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. We begin with one of the biggest stories out of the United States. Now that former Trump advisor Steve Bannon has been arrested and charged with fraud over a fundraising campaign to build a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Bannon and 3 others defrauded hundreds of thousands of donors in connection with the We Build the Wall campaign, which raised $25 million. Bannon himself received more than $1 million, at least some of which he used to cover personal expenses, according to the DOJ. Meanwhile, Brian Colford, who's the founder of the We Build the Wall, covertly took $350,000 for his personal use. Inspector in charge for the Southern District of New York, Philip R. Bartlett, says the 4 created 4 sham invoices and accounts to launder donations and cover up their crimes, showing no regard for the law or for the truth. He said the case should serve as a warning to other fraudsters that no one is above the law, not even a disabled war veteran or millionaire political strategist. Let's talk now to Maria Bird, our correspondent in Washington. Maria, thanks for joining us, and talk to us about how the DOJ found out about this and what gave Bannon away.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, this is a story that has been under investigation for quite some time. And this was a leak that was sent over to the DOJ. And many people were surprised that they even went ahead with this leak and were able to kind of investigate. Because as we know, there has been, not a very good reputation between the DOJ and the White House, and that they are kind of in together and in cahoots. And so many people were surprised that this type of investigation would have come out of what is considered a Trump administration DOJ. And so this was, Bannon was found on a boat right outside of Eastern Connecticut, where he was arrested. And this was obviously, as you mentioned before, this was a fundraiser for the border wall. And many people, even not only were the individuals who gave money toward this organization and toward this fund, were assuming that this was going to other types of uses, but they also were under the impression it was about a volunteering organization process. So I think there was a bit of confusion even with the intent, the full intent of the money that was being collected. And as you said, there were about hundreds of thousands of dollars that were actually used for personal use. And there's 4 individuals that are being indicted on this issue as well.
This dates back from 2016, which means that over time, a lot must have gone in and a lot must have gone out into personal pockets. But what happens now to all of that money? I mean, how do people get their money back, and what happens to the fund itself?
Well, this will go before trial. Most likely, if there's money left in the fund, it will be frozen. There will be a strict investigation to see that all the uses of the money, potentially the money that was, if they are able to identify the exact dollar number that was used for personal use, will probably be brought against as part of the charges brought against the 4 individuals. And then obviously the federal government will try to seize that money if it's found that they are guilty of the crime. And so this is really going to have to play out in court. And we will begin to see, and not only are we talking about potential sentence time in jail, but we're also talking about potentially freezing of personal assets and some real devastation for the families of the 4 individuals that are being indicted.
Is it safe to assume, Maria, that the U.S. president who Bannon was advising really had nothing to do with this, and he said nothing about it so far?
Well, we just came out of a press conference here in Washington, and he's meeting with the Iraqi president. And so he said that this is sad news when he was asked about whether or not he knew of what had happened and if what his response would be. He just said, "This is sad news to hear." And so we'll probably hear more in the coming hours. But this time he is just speaking of this as being sad news.
Maria, thanks again for bringing us up to speed on this, and keep your ears close to the ground for us. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And now to the Democratic National Convention holding at the Wisconsin Center in Milwaukee, the most of which is holding virtually. We've been listening in to bigwigs give their speeches. Wednesday evening was a turn of the vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, who formally accepted the Democratic nomination for vice president, imploring the country to elect Joe Biden in November and accusing President Trump of failed leadership that had cost lives and livelihoods during a pandemic. And making history as the first Black woman and Asian American on a major U.S. presidential ticket, she made a direct appeal to Black Americans and other crucial constituencies that Democrats need in the November 3rd election.
No matter what we look like, no matter where we come from or who we love. A country where we may not agree on every detail, but we are united by the fundamental belief that every human being is of infinite worth, deserving of compassion, dignity, and respect. A country where we look out for one another, where we rise and fall as one, where we face our challenges and celebrate our triumphs together. Today, that country feels distant. Donald Trump's failure of leadership has cost lives and livelihoods.
And that was Kamala Harris. Now, former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton also addressed the convention, saying this cannot be another woulda, coulda, shoulda election. And back in 2016, Clinton lost to Trump. Last night, she offered a ringing endorsement of Joe Biden and his running mate, Kamala Harris.
I wish Donald Trump knew how to be a president, because America needs a president right now. And we need leaders equal to this moment of sacrifice and service. We need Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And Joe picked the right partner in Kamala. She's relentless in the pursuit of justice and equity, and she's kind. When her press secretary, Tyrone Gale, was dying of cancer, she dropped everything to be with him in his final moments. I know something about the slings and arrows she'll face, and believe me, this former district attorney and attorney general can handle them all. For 4 years, people have told me, I didn't realize how dangerous he was. I wish I could do it all over, or worst, I should have voted. Look, this can't be another woulda, coulda, shoulda election.
Well, to cap it all, former President, Barack Obama, on Wednesday, assailed his successor, Donald Trump, as deeply unfit for the office he occupies and argued the voting for his former number two, Joe Biden, was necessary to ensure the very survival of American democracy. Speaking to the mostly virtual convention live from the Museum of American Revolution in Philadelphia, the city where the U.S. Constitution and the country's founding democratic principles were drafted, Obama spoke about how he worked closely with Biden and delivered perhaps his most pointed criticism yet of Trump after staying out of the fray for most of the last 3 years. So we'll have that in a minute, but let's go now to the VOA's Catherine Gibson, who's closely monitoring this convention. Catherine, thanks for joining us on The World Today. It's interesting, all of this is holding virtually. A bit confusing because I'm sure some people are missing out on some of the speeches, but these key ones, Obama, Clinton, and Kamala Harris, I'm sure they did not miss. So let's begin with Kamala Harris. Last night, she accepted the Democratic nomination for vice president. Understandably, a lot of people are excited about this. She's a woman, she's African American, but she's also had quite a controversial career, though, supporting a few policies that have not gone down well with the Black community. So how is it that she's so widely accepted now?
Well, you have to look at some of those we had mentioned earlier. She's the very first woman of color to serve in that nomination role as the vice president on a ticket, but she's also the first South Asian woman, and that's something incredibly unique in this country. Her immigrant story of her parents is something that resonates across the country and will definitely drive voters to the polls in November. Of course, we're also facing a really intense political environment with the Black Lives Matter protests. And a lot of Black voters are saying, look, Kamala has a really deep history of prosecuting some cases against African American men that is deeply problematic. She is going to have to get out somehow, not on the campaign trail in this pandemic environment, but virtually, and make that case that these decisions that she made when she was making those prosecutions were the right decision, and that people should still go out and vote for her and for Joe Biden.
And speaking of presidential candidates, Hillary Clinton also gave her speech saying she said this cannot be another Walter Clotilde election. Hillary and her husband are foremost figures in the Democratic Party. How convincing is she, though, when you look back at her own experience running for the White House against President Trump? Well, against Trump back then.
Right. Well, I think that Hillary Clinton's most effective line last night was when she noted that she had actually won the popular vote in this country. She got more votes than Donald Trump in 2016. But because of the way that our electoral college system works, Trump was able to get the key votes, a handful of a couple of 100,000 votes in the correct states that meant that he won the electoral college. When Hillary Clinton comes on and makes that point, everybody in this country remembers that moment when a woman got more votes than the man, but she just didn't make it in the right places. That is supposed to motivate Democratic Party voters to come out in such massive numbers that there's no question that Biden and Harris have won, and that Trump won't have a case to stand on saying that this election was rigged or that there wasn't enough voting in some key states. That's going to be a major concern on Election Day, and I think in the weeks following.
Yeah, and we're seeing the power couples, the Clintons and the Obamas. Michelle Obama spoke the first night of this convention, and last night we saw Barack Obama throwing his support behind Biden, especially ever since Biden announced his intention to run. But how do people then balance what he said at the convention with that infamous remark about Biden possibly ruining everything? And I'm paraphrasing at this point.
Right. I think that you have to remember that at the foundation of this, Barack Obama and Joe Biden had a historically intense, close relationship in terms of president and vice president. Sometimes there's tension between those two offices, but that was definitely not the case between Obama and Biden. Obama joked that Joe was running everything because he had such a deep history in the U.S. government, serving in the U.S. Senate, a deep knowledge of policy. He also referred to Biden as his brother, that this relationship that developed between the two of them was so unexpected and so meaningful to him. He really spoke to Biden's character as a person in that speech last night and really made the case that he's the right person because of his deep empathy and kindness that he saw when he was serving as his vice president. I think Obama made that argument very effectively last night.
Catherine, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Tonight is the final night for the Democratic National Convention. We look forward to Joe Biden, of course, accepting formally the party's nomination. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
Stay with us. There's more coming up on The World today, including this. A British inventor scooping the world record for fastest electric ice cream. Stay with us. Welcome back to the world today. Here's what else is happening in the world. Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny is said to be currently unconscious in hospital after suffering a suspected poisoning. He reportedly fell ill during a flight and the plane had to make an emergency landing.
Early reports on Alexei Navalny's situation said he was in a coma in a Siberia hospital after drinking a cup of tea that his spokesperson said she believed was laced with poison. The 44-year-old is currently in intensive care and on an artificial lung ventilator. One of the doctors in the hospital there said it was not certain that he had been poisoned and that natural poisoning was one of several diagnoses being considered and that tests were being carried out. News about the possible poisoning of the opposition leader has received condemnation from the international community. British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said he was deeply concerned by the reports. In a tweet, he said, "I am deeply concerned by reports that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been poisoned on a flight to Moscow and is now in a coma in intensive care. My thoughts are with him and his family." Even Belarusian activist Veronika Sepkalo said the situation surrounding Navalny was unacceptable.
Yes, unfortunately, I found out this morning that he was poisoned. Hopefully, he will be okay. I mean, I'm very upset to hear. I'm very upset to know this news.
The Russian government, on the other hand, says doctors are doing all they can to help Navalny. It has also wished Navalny a speedy recovery. Alexei Navalny has been a fierce critic of President Vladimir Putin. Reports say he started feeling unwell when he returned to Moscow from Tomsk in Siberia by plane on Wednesday morning. He was carried off the plane on a stretcher after it made an emergency landing in Omsk. Doctors are said to be battling to save his life and expect to have a diagnosis on his situation by evening. For now, with his wife by his side at the hospital, supporters pray he lives to stand against the Kremlin again.
Now, more European countries are seeing a rise in coronavirus cases, with Spain, Italy and Germany reporting their highest daily figures in months. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization in Europe is appealing to younger people not to relax their guard against COVID-19. Here's a global update. The World Health Organization also says the number of new cases appearing in countries such as Croatia and the Western Balkans has been a source of concern since June. The agency's senior emergency officer, Dr. Catherine Smallwood, called the region a sub-regional hotspot for COVID-19, but says a leveling off of new infections was now being seen in some countries.
The situation in the Western Balkans has been a concern of ours since early June, when we started to see cases increase, and it's been very much a sort of sub-regional hotspot over the summer period.
In other parts of Europe, Belgium, for instance, the Prime Minister, Sophie Wilms, has announced a loosening of restrictions as the number of new cases decreases in the country. She said people will no longer be required to do shopping alone and could be accompanied with another person starting from August 24th. Madrid has carried out mass coronavirus tests as part of a plan to curb the spread of COVID-19 in the Spanish capital. Many people from Vallecas neighborhood received a message from their local health center asking them to attend Federico Montseny Hospital to get tested for the virus. With less than 2 weeks left for school holidays, the country's lack of a plan to safely reopen classrooms amid soaring coronavirus infections has angered parents and teachers and drawn fierce criticism from the political opposition. The pandemic situation has recently rebounded in Croatia, with confirmed COVID-19 cases surging. The country opened its borders in July and more than 2 million tourists converged in the last month, 54% more than the same period of last year. Most of the recent new infections happen in tourist attractions. The country currently has more than 7,000 cases of COVID-19, with 168 deaths. Moving on to Latin America, the number of coronavirus cases in Colombia has surpassed 500,000 as deaths from the virus approach 16,000 and the country nears the end of 5 months of lockdown. President Ivan Duque declared an ongoing nationwide lockdown to slow the spread of the virus in late March. It is set to continue to the end of August, with stricter limitations in some neighborhoods of the capital, Bogota, where infections are higher. Finally, the United States has reported more than 5.5 million COVID-19 cases and more than 172,965 deaths, according to the Johns Hopkins University. The state of California topped all cases with more than 643,000 cases. Cases in the states of Florida, Texas, and New York surpassed 584,000, 573,000, and 427,000, respectively. As we end the world today, a British inventor has achieved a Guinness World Record for the fastest electric ice cream van by reaching a speed of just over 70 miles per hour in his eco-friendly vehicle. It's taken Ed China, who has won several records before, over 2 years to electrify his van, which originally had a diesel engine. China, in his van, named Ed's Electric Isis, scooped the award by getting up to 73.921 miles per hour. He celebrated afterwards by posing for pictures with his certificate and, of course, eating ice cream. Well, it's nice to get awards. According to a press release, China created a conversion kit for ice cream vans to move from diesel to electric to help combat emissions, an idea he hopes will be used around the world.
World records attempt, I need an adjudicator. So here's Prav. Hello, sir.
Ed, absolutely delighted to be invited here to adjudicate the fastest.
And I'm hoping his ice cream tastes as good as the joy he had receiving that award. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.